It's January 10. Ukraine Media Center confirms starts its operation today. My name is Svetlana Cheprenko. Good morning, everybody. Today we will be talking about the launch of the Joint Center for Search of the Russian Military in Ukraine, which is called I Want to Find You. The center will allow the Russians to find information about the Russian military who were captured prisoners of war in Ukraine. Our speakers today are Andriy, Yusov, representative of Main Directorate of Intelligence, Vitalii Matviienko, the spokesperson of I Want to Live and I Want to Find You projects, and Irina Krynina, co-founder of Civil Movement to bring the military men of Russia back to Russian Federation. So let's talk about the way how the exchanges are going on, exchanges of prisoners of war, and is Russian Federation even interested in searching and bringing back their citizens home? Good morning, everybody. Thank you for invitation. Yes, the coordination headquarters on treatment of prisoners of war is not only about the Ukrainian prisoners of war who ended up in aggressor country, who were illegally, and the civilians who were illegally abducted, but it's also about handling of Russian prisoners of war who ended up in captivity as a result of genocidal war of Russia against Ukraine. And obviously the work is going on. It's a public work and a close part of the work which is going on the exchanges. Recently we had one of the biggest exchanges, the biggest exchange during the full-scale invasion, 49th exchange, during which 230 defenders of Ukraine, including military men and citizens, and civilians were brought back home. And Ukraine, in this complicated and sensitive issue, tries to be as much democratic as possible, as civilized as possible, and in terms of publicizing the information about our defenders, National Information Bureau is working on the relevant registers of the coordination headquarters. We have accounts established for our defenders, and in terms of handling the Russian prisoners of war, and Geneva Convention for us is not a formal document here, but a guideline which describes all the places for detention of captured enemies and extension of information. So we use a number of instruments, and I Want to Live government project works in coordination headquarters, and the goal of this publicity is clear, is to help those Russians who ended up in the ranks of the aggressor army, who were either mobilized or forced to be mobilized, who were not cautious enough to find themselves there, those who don't want to participate in the war crimes, those who do not want to spatter their arms in blood, those who want to preserve dignity and remain under the protection of the Geneva Convention and under protection of Ukraine. This project is for them. This is a successful project. We can talk about the statistics a little bit later, but during the full-scale invasion, during the aggression, and during the work of the coordination headquarters, and during implementation of I Want to Live project, we may state that unlike Ukraine, the aggressor country, Russian Federation, does not communicate properly with the family members of the servicemen of the occupiers' army. They are not being informed about their fate, both of their servicemen, both in terms of those perished ones, taken prisoners of war, and missing in action. And the relatives of Russian servicemen of the aggressor army try to get in touch with coordination headquarters, trying to find out the fate of their loved ones. We know the cases when Ukraine handed over the bodies of the perished occupiers, but the relatives never got any information about the returned bodies of their family members. So there is a need to scale up this activity from the point of view of humanitarian mission. Since Ukraine is a democratic country and there is activization of the civil movement processes in the aggressor country, if Russian Federation does not fulfill the functions of informing, advising, something that the government is supposed, the state is supposed to do in relation to its citizens, Ukraine as a democratic country is ready to take any measures to extend such information. And we're talking here about verified information, about the confirmation of the representatives of the aggressor army being taken captives or perished in the battlefield. And also we have information about those ones missing in action. So within the framework of this project I Want to Find You, Ukraine is going to extend such information. And it's necessary from the point of view from our own observation. And we've also got contacted multiple times by the representatives of Russian Federation through closed informal channel and also in a public way, who describe the problems the people in totalitarian state are facing. This is why we expand the activities of coordination headquarters and we established the new project called I Want to Find You, where the citizens of Russian Federation, within the framework of which the citizens of Russian Federation can contact us and obtain the information about their relatives who ended up in the ranks of Russian army. The information that is being concealed from them by the ruling regime in Russian Federation, the top-level government officials and military commands. So what is the mechanics of this project? It obviously uses the new digital technologies and the experience of work of chatbots within the project I Want to Live. It will be mirrored in the project I Want to Find You. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Andriy. Mr. Vitalii, as a speaker of these two humanitarian projects, I Want to Live and I Want to Find You. So do you have any details about the Russians contacting your projects? What is the number of people who were trying to contact you, and what is the number of people whom their relatives were able to find in Ukraine? Thank you very much for the question. A little bit of statistics within the project I Want to Live. We've been contacted more than 30,000 times through all the channels of communications. We've fulfilled more than 300 successful operations of Russian soldiers surrendering, and more than 1,000 of them are underway or either being finalized. Talking about the main goal of I Want to Live project, the voluntary surrendering, as Mr. Yusov mentioned, we were contacted by the relatives of the Russians, of the Russian military, who are in the ranks of aggressor army. They're trying to find their loved ones, to find out whether they are taken captives as a prisoners of war or dead in the battlefield, because Russia doesn't really disseminate the information for their citizens, like what's going on to their family members who ended up in the territory of Ukraine. So we get contacted on daily basis by hundreds of Russians through the channels of I Want to Live, and we've taken this decision to launch the new project I Want to Find You as a joint center for search of Russian military, to extend information to the family members of the Russian military, so they come with this information to the representatives of their government to demand exchanges in case their relatives are taken prisoners of war, or the return of their remains in case their family members are dead. So we plan to be contacted thousands of times by Russian citizens on a weekly basis. I would like to demonstrate the operation of the chatbot, if we can put it on the screen, please. Well, it's a little bit different? Well, seems to work. So the chatbot is in Telegram. It's very convenient and simple for those who look for information about their family members. They just add all the necessary details, providing all necessary information about those whom they look for, and they provide their personal details, and chatbot looks for all of the necessary details through our databases, either through the database of prisoners of war or the database from of missing in action or the dead ones. It comes from different channels. Also, it may happen so that we do not have such information so far, but the chatbot will provide this in response upon request. And after Russian citizens receive information about their military, they do not only they are not only entitled, but they should come to their government and demand for the relevant status for their family members, demand exchanges. So within this humanitarian project, we pursue an important goal for the Ukrainians who are being held captive as well. And I would like to give the floor to Ms. Irina, who will tell us about her initiative. Good morning. My name is Irina Krynina. I'm a citizen of Russian Federation, and now I represent the civil movement aimed to search and bring back the soldiers of Russian army. Here enter we. I'm one of the co-founders of this movement, as Mr. Andriy and Mr. Vitalii have just mentioned. Really, there are two problems for the time being. One is related to Ukraine because their relatives cannot get any information about the prisoners of war, about the Ukrainian prisoners of war who ended up in Russian Federation, and those who were missing in action. Russia does not provide any details about them. And the similar situation is on the Russian side with the citizens of Russian Federation. In the same way, Russia does not provide any information for their Russian citizens, neither about the prisoners of war nor about the missing in action. This is why Ukraine, as it was already mentioned, is ready to provide such information within the project I Want to Find You. And we've come up with the initiative to organize the connection of the relatives with this project. We are going to collect the requests, and in case of a positive answer like yes, your relative is being held prisoner of war, they can get consultation from our movement, and we will organize a video call to confirm and give the opportunity to a Russian citizen to come to their government, and based on this video call to demand like yes, my Vasily is there, held prisoner of war, held captive, and seek exchange. So we're trying to provide the Russian women with the tools using which they can start demanding something from their government. We've also developed a roadmap for search of the Russian servicemen in Ukraine. So this roadmap will allow Russian women stop being afraid and start demanding the government to fulfill their obligations, because the Russian women are entitled to demand their government to bring their men back home, and our civil movement will help the families get united, because it's way more difficult to find something out being alone rather than fighting together and seeking proper result together. And this result for both Ukraine and Russia is to bring all the men back home. Our roadmap includes 5 sections. It covers the way from the very beginning like what a man or his relatives are supposed to do as he is being sent to war. So here are the tools using which they can avoid going to war, but in case they didn't make it due to some reasons, we developed the scenarios what to do, for example, when the connection is cut or when the military are being assigned the status of MIA, or for example if their relatives find out that their relatives are being held captive as a prisoners of war. So what to do in such situation, how to coordinate it with the government, how to seek the assignment of status of POW, or that POWs are included in the lists for exchange, and to make sure they are being exchanged. So our final goal is to bring the POWs back to Russia and to bring Ukrainians back home in the same way. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Irina. Mr. Vitalii, apart from this Telegram bot that you've announced, are there any other channels of communication that the Russians can use to find their loved ones, and how this project is going to be communicated in Russian Federation besides the project that is mentioned by Irina? Well, we will add all the necessary instruments. We have a powerful team of professionals who work perfectly. We have a website through which you can go proceed to chatbot. Telegram is not banned in Russia, and if there are any problems, they can use VPNs. They know how to do it, and the tradition of use of VPNs is already rooted in Russian Federation. It's normal there. And again, let me repeat myself, we'll see how it develops. And as I mentioned, we expect to get about 1,000 applications on a weekly basis from the Russians, so we'll see how we can improve it, how we can modernize it. We cannot disclose all of the details, but let me assure you that this project, as of, well, we have already successful cases that we may disclose a little bit later. Thank you. Mr. Andriy, can we expect that thanks to this project the exchanges will be intensified, the exchanges of prisoners of war, and more Ukrainians that are currently held captive will be brought back home? Well, obviously it's one of the tasks of this project. Ukraine multiple times emphasized that we are ready to exchange Russian POWs who ended up in Ukrainian captivity as occupiers, as invaders, but only against exchange of our defenders. And to exchange them, Russian Federation should want to take them back. And we have cases when mixed medical commissions cannot start their work because Russian Federation just does not verify such a tool, which is stipulated by Geneva Conventions, and the lists of heavily wounded Russian occupiers which are publicized. Russian Federation, the aggressor country, just refuses to take them back, and publicity of this information, this tool is just a tool of additional public campaign both on international level and inside Russian Federation. No matter how totalitarian they are, there are people, there are horizontal ties, and basically these women, the sisters, the mothers, and the wives, on them it depends on how much they want to bring their loved ones back home, how much they want to know the truth about what's going on with this war. This is what the fate of their loved ones depends on, and it definitely should help to bring our defenders, both male and female, back home. Talking about the tool of sharing, yeah, the experience of I Want to Live project demonstrated that no matter how Russia wants to block the access to information, in the modern world it's impossible to do so. And those who want to hand over to the information, who want to receive the information, they have such an opportunity, both using Telegram bots and other tools. All the modern digital tools will be implemented in I Want to Find You project. everything will be available. But what's important is the horizontal ties, the information coming from word of mouth, from sister to sister, from wife to wife, from mother to mother. And in Russian Federation, there are people who want to save their loved ones more than they are afraid of their authorities. And we bet on this. Ukraine is ready to provide verified information, the precise information, and it will be more absurd even to exercise any activities against this project by Russian Federation, because it's a humanitarian project which provides verified information in compliance with international humanitarian law, Geneva Conventions. We provide information about the fate of specific servicemen of the aggressor army. So any attempts to block this project will be another war crime of Russian Federation, but in this case against their citizens and their family members. Thank you very much. I would like to invite our journalist to ask questions. Good afternoon, Natalia Molchanova, Ukrinform. I'm having a question to Mr. Vitalii Matviienko. You say that you're being contacted by hundreds of Russians on a daily basis, but do you have any statistics about the number of wives or mothers of Russian prisoners of war who contact Ukraine with a request to find their family members? Thank you for your question. The figure that you are interested about can be disclosed a little bit later. Now our main task is the launch of this project, and shortly we will announce this figure. What is the real number of the relatives of Russians who contacted us in search of their family members? And before the launch of the project, I want to find you, there were a lot of applications submitted through I Want to Live project, because it's them who look for the information and they try to contact us in all ways possible, through all channels, through WhatsApp, through calls. They were leaving the emails, so they were leaving their applications in huge numbers, really in hundreds, and we will announce the number a little bit later. Yes, so this is why we want to establish the joint center for applications, because previously the information was differentiated and Russian citizens were either coming to main Directorate of Intelligence or Security Service of Ukraine or the coordination headquarters. Now this information will be unified and available to everybody in one platform. Thank you very much. And question about our prisoners of war. Do we have an understanding of the total number of Ukrainian prisoners of war, both military and civilians? And talking about the Russian POWs, if you can call this number, so what is the number of Russians taken as prisoners of war for the time being? And also, if you may call this number, what is the number of commissioned officers between them? Yes, we have such understanding, but we cannot provide the number. We cannot provide the figure. Obviously, every family of Ukrainian prisoner of war and civilian hostages are informed about the status. We have the access to personal accounts, and as long as the negotiation processes are going on, and as long as the exchanges are going on, we don't communicate this information. International Committee for Red Cross, at their own discretion, may provide public information on their end. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions within our topic? RBK Ukraine, Yulia Kamir, I would like to ask a little bit about our people. As it's known, in occupied territories, Russia abducts Ukrainian civilians and they just disappear somewhere, either being transported to Russian Federation or elsewhere. Do we know what is the purpose of their abduction, and are we trying to bring them back, at least at some level of communication? Thank you. Yes, obviously we try to do it, and the exchanges are not the only instrument in case of the civilians, especially because it's in the case of abduction of civilians, it's a terroristic and some pirate practice. It's like Ukraine should raid the Bryansk region, capture some civilians there, and then establish some mass exchanges, but we're not terrorists. We don't do it in a way as Putin's Russia do. Yes, the information is being gathered as a counter-terroristic activity, filtration measures. In fact, the Russians repress under such premises the civil population in occupied territories, but in Crimea and Donbass, all this is happening since 2014. Many people ended up in Russian captivity since 2014, and we work on all of them, and we expect to get the results shortly. The problem is that such activities are still going on real time. The repressive machine of Russian Federation in temporarily occupied territories exercises all such kinds of activities on the fabricated premises against our civil population, and the purpose of such activity is either corruption component or some reporting or just desire to own someone else's property, to appropriate someone else's property like cars, vehicles, housing, sometimes land plots, talking about farmers. So all of those are war crimes. We document all the information and we work on it. Just a couple of details. Are they being convicted in Russia? And if so, what are the accusations? Well, the most popular accusations are terrorism, discrediting of Russian army, and so on and so forth. However, there are categories of population or the categories of citizens whose rights are restricted without any legal status, who are being held captive even beyond the legal system, beyond the judicial system of Russian Federation. And this is what we emphasize in our communication with international community. We pay a lot of attention to it. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions on the topic of the briefing? Well, now that we do not, there is a question. Thank you. I'm an interpreter for Mr. Florence Lemont. Can you please tell us whether there were any other additional programs on top of those that you've mentioned to seek any reaction from Russian society? Are they bringing any results? Thank you. Well, it's a philosophical question of a broad nature. You know, all the information activities, all the resistance in the front lines, all the activity of the civil society, and the position of the free democratic world is the attempt to seek understanding of Russian Federation population. Yes, we understand that it's a closed totalitarian country with a repressive machine which aim to fight not only democratic world but also the civil society, but at the same time a huge fraction of population during the full-scale invasion have changed their point of view. Frequently they pay a very difficult price. They lose their loved ones, they experience some other personal tragedies just because they were not ready to exercise the active resistance against the system when it was time to do so. And Ukraine now sends this signal to all the citizens of Russian Federation whose relatives ended up in the rank of the invaders' army of Putin's Russia. And yes, today we appeal not to Putin but directly to the citizens of Russian Federation, including with the help of the civil society. Thank you. Do we have any more questions on the floor? Then let me remind you that we were fighting about the launch of the joint center for storage of the military of the Russian Federation of Ukraine. I want to find you, and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform will be back in operation in half an hour, and we will announce the team for the United States Air Force trials this year. Stay tuned. Thank you.